Story 1. The Scratching in the Walls. Evelyn had always wanted to live in the city, but as anyone who's ever moved to a big city knows, dreams often clash with reality. Rent was outrageous, landlords were ruthless, and finding a decent roommate was like playing Russian roulette. When she saw the ad for a room in a quiet, ivy-clad brick building just a short bus ride from her university, it felt like fate. The rent was cheap, the apartment was cozy, and the roommate, Lila, seemed polite, almost shy, when they first met. The first night was uneventful, save for the old pipes groaning every time someone flushed in the building. But by the second night, Evelyn heard something else, a scratching sound. It was faint at first, like tiny claws running against plaster, and it came from the wall by her bed. She sat up, straining her ears. Scratch, scratch, pause. Scratch, scratch, scratch. She grimaced. Rats. It had to be rats. She told herself she'd asked the landlord for traps in the morning, but when she mentioned it to Lila over coffee, her roommate just smiled faintly. Oh, that? Don't worry. It's just the building settling. Happens a lot in older places. Evelyn wasn't convinced. The sound didn't feel like wood shifting or plaster cracking. It was deliberate, persistent, like something trying to get through. That night, it returned, louder. Scratch, scratch, scratch. She pressed her ear to the wall. The sound was directly beside her head, no more than a few inches away. She banged her palm against the plaster. The scratching stopped. For a moment, she breathed a sigh of relief. Then, as she turned off her lamp, she heard something that froze her blood. 3 slow scratches, and then what sounded like a low exhale. By the third night, Evelyn was exhausted. She had dark circles under her eyes and a short temper. She decided she'd confront the landlord the next morning. But something strange happened. She was sitting at her desk, finishing a paper, when Lila came home. The moment her roommate shut the door, the scratching stopped. Evelyn blinked at the silence, almost suspicious. Do you hear that? She asked. Hear what? Lila replied, hanging her coat. The scratching. It's been going all night. Now it's gone. Lila gave her a small smile. It was too calm, too knowing. I told you it's nothing. Don't worry. Evelyn tried to brush it off, but later that night, as she walked past the bathroom, she noticed Lila standing at the sink, scrubbing her hands furiously. Her fingernails were rimmed with red. Are you okay? Evelyn asked. Lila flinched, then turned slightly, hiding her hands. Just a nosebleed, she muttered. She left the bathroom light on when she went to her room. Evelyn glanced into the sink. The basin was streaked with something dark, not just blood, but something thicker, like bits of tissue. Her stomach turned. The scratching grew bolder. It no longer waited for midnight, but began as soon as Evelyn turned off her lights. Sometimes, it seemed to move, shifting along the wall as though following her. Other times, it came from inside the ceiling, directly above her bed. She barely slept. When she did, she dreamed of claws reaching through the walls, groping for her. The next morning, she asked Lila again, Do you really not hear it? Lila stared at her for a long moment. Then she said, Maybe you shouldn't listen so hard. Her tone was flat, final, like a warning. Evelyn couldn't take it anymore. One evening, when Lila left for her night shift, Evelyn grabbed a flashlight and pressed her ear to the wall. The scratching was louder than ever, but now it sounded rhythmic, almost like someone digging. She dragged her bed away from the wall and examined the plaster. Faint lines, long and curved, marked the paint, as if something sharp had scraped from the other side. Hard hammering, she found a small hole near the floor, hidden behind the baseboard heater. She bent low, shined the flashlight in, and gasped. Inside, the narrow space between the walls wasn't empty. Piles of shredded fabric, broken bits of wood, and bones. Small bones, like from a bird. Or maybe something bigger. She staggered back, covering her mouth. When Lila came home that night, Evelyn confronted her. What's inside the walls, Lila? Her roommate froze in the doorway. For the first time, Evelyn saw something flicker across her face, something sharp, almost predatory. I told you not to listen, Lila said softly. Evelyn's voice shook. There are bones. Scratches. What the hell is going on? Lila stepped closer, her pale hands hanging loosely at her sides. Her nails were ragged, caked with something dark. She tilted her head. Sometimes, she whispered, the walls get hungry. Evelyn's blood ran cold. That night, Evelyn locked her bedroom door. She pushed her dresser in front of it for good measure. She tried to convince herself she was imagining things, that her roommate was just strange. But around 3 a.m., the scratching began again. Only this time, it wasn't in the wall. It was at her door. Long, deliberate scratches, dragging slowly across the wood. She clapped a hand over her mouth to stifle a scream. The sound stopped, then came again, lower this time, near the doorknob. And then, 3 hard knocks. Evelyn, Lila's voice crooned through the door. You should let me in. Evelyn backed away, shaking, clutching her phone. She dialed 911 with trembling fingers. But when the operator answered, all she could whisper was, my roommate, she's not right. By the time the police arrived, Lila was gone. The apartment was searched. The walls were torn open. What they found inside made headlines. Animal bones, yes, but also human remains. Teeth, fragments of jawbones, scraps of fabric that looked like torn clothing. Lila never returned. The police said her identity didn't match any records. No birth certificate, no family. It was as if she'd never existed. Evelyn moved out immediately. But sometimes, late at night, when she's trying to sleep, she swears she still hears it. Scratch, scratch, scratch. And she wonders if it was really the walls that were hungry, or the thing that called itself Lila. Story 2, The Borrowed Face. When Adam first found Greg's roommate ad, it seemed like a blessing. He'd just moved to the city, rent was steep, and Greg's apartment was spacious, modern, and strangely affordable. Greg was soft-spoken, polite, and always smiling in a way that put Adam at ease. At first, living together was easy. Greg was tidy, quiet, and rarely left dishes in the sink. Adam thought he'd lucked out. But about a month in, small oddities began to creep in. One morning, while digging through the junk drawer for batteries, Adam found a Polaroid photo tucked beneath a stack of envelopes. It was of him, sleeping. His face was slack, mouth slightly open, his arm draped over his chest. Adam frowned. He had no memory of posing for it, and who even used a Polaroid camera anymore? He confronted Greg casually. Hey, man, do you own a Polaroid camera? Greg didn't look up from his cereal. Nah. What? Adam shrugged, sliding the photo back into his pocket. Just wondering. Greg smiled faintly, spoon halfway to his mouth. Maybe the walls are taking pictures of you. Adam forced a laugh, but his skin prickled. The next week, Adam found another. This time it was tucked under his pillow. Same thing, him sleeping, but from a slightly different angle. The background confirmed it was taken in his own room. He began tearing his bedroom apart, searching for hidden cameras. Nothing. No lens glinting from the vents, no wires tucked behind picture frames. Still, every few days, another Polaroid appeared. Sometimes, they were in plain sight, taped to the fridge, slipped under his coffee mug, left neatly on his desk. Each photo was closer than the last. It was a Sunday afternoon when Adam returned from a run and heard Greg talking in his room. The door was slightly ajar. Adam paused, wiping sweat from his forehead, and peeked inside. Greg stood in front of the mirror, whispering something over and over. His voice was soft, rhythmic, almost like a chant. Then Greg turned slightly, and Adam's stomach lurched. Greg wasn't wearing his own face. He wore a latex mask, molded perfectly into Adam's features. The same jawline, same cheekbones, even the faint scar above his eyebrow. The paint was just realistic enough to be horrifying, though the eye holes stretched unnaturally wide, exposing Greg's hungry gaze beneath. Adam's breath caught. He stepped back, the floor creaked. Greg froze, then slowly pulled the mask from his face. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Greg smiled. I just want to be you, he whispered. Adam laughed it off at first. Or tried to. Confronting Greg, he demanded an explanation. It was a joke, Greg insisted, chuckling nervously. You should have seen your face. The photos too, it's just pranks. Come on, lighten up. But the way Greg's eyes lingered, unblinking, told a different story. That night, Adam locked his bedroom door for the first time. He lay awake for hours, listening. Around 2 a.m., he swore he heard faint footsteps in the hall, followed by the soft click of his doorknob being tested. Adam laughed it off at first, or tried to. Confronting Greg, he demanded an explanation. It was a joke, Greg insisted, chuckling nervously. You should have seen your face. The photos too, it's just pranks. Come on, lighten up. But the way Greg's eyes lingered, unblinking, told a different story. That night, Adam locked his bedroom door for the first time. He lay awake for hours, listening. Around 2 a.m., he swore he heard faint footsteps in the hall, followed by the soft click of his doorknob being tested. Adam knew he couldn't live like this. He decided to move out quietly, but first, he needed evidence, something to show the landlord, maybe even the police. While Greg was at work, Adam entered his room. It was immaculate. Too immaculate. The bed was perfectly made, the dresser organized like a showroom. But when Adam opened the closet, he froze. Inside were rows of mannequins, faceless and plastic. Each wore his clothes. His jacket, his running shoes, even the t-shirt from his high school swim team. Their plastic hands were painted to mimic veins and skin tone. And hanging above them, neatly displayed like trophies, were dozens of latex masks. All of them were his face. Some were crude, early attempts with sagging features. Others were eerily lifelike, complete with synthetic hair matching his exact shade. Adam staggered back, while rising in his throat. On the desk nearby sat stacks of Polaroids. Not just of him sleeping, but of him showering, brushing his teeth, changing clothes. His entire life cataloged, frame by frame. That night, Adam didn't sleep. He stuffed essentials into a duffel bag and kept it by the bed. His plan was simple: leave at dawn. Don't look back. But sometime after 3 a.m., he woke to the sound of his door unlocking. His heart stopped. He knew he'd locked it. The door creaked open. Greg stood there, silhouetted in the hall light. He wore the mask again, Adam's face stretched too tight over his own. In one hand, he held a knife. In the other, a Polaroid camera. The flash went off, searing Adam's vision. Don't move, Greg whispered, voice muffled behind the latex. I need this one perfect. Adam bolted. He shoved past Greg, knocking the knife from his hand. They crashed into the hallway wall, the latex mask tearing slightly, exposing Greg's wild eyes beneath. Adam ran, out the door, down the stairs, barefoot into the freezing night. He didn't stop until he reached the all-night diner 2 blocks away, where he called the police. When authorities searched the apartment, Greg was gone. But the evidence remained. Hundreds of Polaroids, mannequins dressed as Adam, and masks, dozens of masks. The landlord claimed Greg's background checks had come back clean, but later, investigators discovered that Greg wasn't even his real name. His identity was fabricated. As for the masks, they were traced back to custom orders, paid for in cash. The craftsman who made them said Greg provided photos, detailed measurements, even hair samples. To this day, Adam doesn't know how Greg got those. He moved far away, changed his number, and never posted photos of himself online again. But sometimes, in crowded places, on the subway, in grocery stores, he swears he catches a glimpse of himself. Not in the mirror, not in a reflection, but in the face of a stranger watching him from across the room. Story 3, The Silent Room. When Carla first met her new roommate, Jenna, she thought she'd struck gold. The apartment was spacious, the rent split was manageable, and Jenna herself seemed quiet, tidy, and almost overly polite. The only unusual thing was one rule Jenna laid down on the first day. My room is off limits, Jenna said, her eyes locking with Carla's. No exceptions. Carla laughed awkwardly, thinking it was a joke, but Jenna's expression didn't shift. There was a coldness there, just for a flicker, before her lips pressed into a thin smile. Carla shrugged. Everyone had their quirks. Living with Jenna was, at first, easy. She kept to herself, never left messes in the kitchen, and always paid her half of the bills, until she didn't. It started small. One month, Jenna claimed she'd forgotten to deposit her paycheck. The next, she promised her transfer would come tomorrow. Eventually, Carla realized Jenna hadn't paid rent for nearly 3 months. Worse, Jenna was rarely home. Some nights Carla would hear her pacing in her room at odd hours, muffled footsteps thudding against the floor. Other nights, the apartment felt empty for days, Jenna's door shut tight, no sound at all. Curiosity gnawed at Carla. Sometimes, when Jenna wasn't home, she'd linger near that forbidden door. She noticed scratches around the lock, as if it had been pried open many times before. A faint metallic smell, like rust or blood, clung to the air around the threshold. She tried to push the thoughts away, until the rent notice arrived. The landlord called, furious, demanding the missing payments. Carla was cornered. She couldn't afford the place alone, and Jenna hadn't left her even a cent. That night, Carla sat on the couch, staring at the closed door across the hall. If Jenna was hiding money, or worse, squatting with no intention of paying, it was Carla's right to know. The rule didn't matter anymore. The lock gave way easier than she expected. The door swung open with a low groan. Carla froze. It wasn't a bedroom. The windows were blacked out with layers of heavy fabric, the walls covered in thick gray foam panels, like a recording studio. A harsh smell of chemicals stung her nose. Bleach, sweat, something rotting beneath. In the center of the room sat a chair bolted to the floor. Leather restraints dangled from its arms and legs. Nearby, a tripod camera faced the chair, its lens cracked but still functional. Carla's breath came shallow as her eyes adjusted. On the far wall was a collage of photographs. Hundreds of them. Every single one was of her. Sleeping, eating breakfast, walking to the bus stop, reading on the couch. The angles made her skin crawl. Some shots were from within her bedroom, from behind the shower curtain, from just inches away as she slept. Her stomach lurched. The floor creaked. Carla spun around, heart hammering. Jenna stood in the doorway. Her face was unreadable, pale in the dim light. Slowly, she stepped into the room, shutting the door behind her with a click. "You weren't supposed to see this," Jenna said softly. Carla's mouth opened, but no words came. Jenna tilted her head, almost curious, as though studying an insect caught in a jar. "You broke the rule. That means you're part of it now." Carla backed away, her hand brushing the cold leather of the restraint chair. She wanted to scream, but the room was too quiet, eerily quiet. The foam panels swallowed sound, her breath already muffled in her own ears. Jenna stepped closer, her smile spreading, wide and unnatural. "Don't worry. You'll get used to the silence." Carla bolted. She shoved past Jenna, slamming the door open. Her footsteps thundered down the hall, but her voice, her screams, felt distant, muted, as if the silence clung to her skin like a second layer. Behind her, Jenna didn't run. She walked, calm, steady, the sound of her bare feet whispering against the floor. Somehow that was worse. Carla tore out of the apartment into the night, heart exploding in her chest. She didn't look back until she hit the street, gasping, desperate for someone, anyone, to help. But when she glanced up at the windows of her building, the blinds shifted. A pale face peered down. Jenna, smiling. Carla left that night and never returned. She moved in with a friend across town, filed police reports, begged the landlord to investigate. When officers finally broke into Jenna's bedroom, the space was empty. The restraints, the cameras, the photos, all gone. The room was bare, pristine, as though it had never been touched. Jenna had vanished, leaving no trace behind. But sometimes, late at night, Carla still feels it, that silence, heavy and smothering, pressing in around her. And every now and then, when she looks into dark windows or mirrors, she swears she sees Jenna's reflection. Watching. Waiting. Story 4, The Night Visitor. Jason had never been good at living alone. He'd grown up in a crowded house full of siblings, where noise was constant and solitude was rare. So, when he finally moved out for college, he knew a roommate would make life easier. He wasn't picky, just someone quiet, responsible, and not the type to throw wild parties at 3 a.m. That's how he ended up with Mark. Mark seemed normal enough when they first met through a campus housing ad. Polite, soft-spoken, maybe a little reserved, but Jason thought nothing of it. He had his quirks, he rarely smiled, and he seemed to avoid eye contact. But compared to nightmare roommate stories Jason had heard, Mark seemed like a blessing. It was only later that Jason began to notice the strangeness. At first, Jason thought Mark talked in his sleep. It began a few weeks after they moved in. Jason would be drifting off to sleep in his room when he'd hear it. Soft whispers, rising and falling in rhythm, as if Mark were mumbling through a dream. Jason would smile, roll his eyes, and shove a pillow over his head. Lots of people talked in their sleep. But then he started hearing his name. The first time he wasn't sure. A faint murmur, drifting through the thin wall that separated their rooms. Jason. He sat up in bed, pulse quickening. Maybe he'd imagined it. Maybe he was just half asleep. But the next night, it was clearer. Jason. Drawn out, soft, almost sing-song. Jason laughed nervously to himself. Weird, he muttered. Maybe Mark was dreaming about him. Still, something about it made his skin crawl. Weeks passed. The whispers grew louder. Clearer. One night, Jason woke to the distinct sound of someone right in his doorway. He blinked into the dark, disoriented. The apartment was silent except for the faint hum of the fridge in the kitchen. Then he heard it. Jason, his name, whispered like a prayer. Jason fumbled for his phone, flicking on the flashlight. The beam cut across the small bedroom and froze. Mark stood at the foot of his bed. His eyes were wide open, glassy, pupils blown wide. His lips moved steadily, whispering Jason's full name over and over, each repetition sending a cold shiver crawling down Jason's spine. Jason Taylor. Jason Taylor. Jason Taylor. Jason's throat locked up. His pulse hammered. He tried to speak. Mark, what the hell are you doing? But the words stuck. Mark's voice stayed steady, unbroken, like a chant. His shadow loomed across the wall, trembling with each flicker of Jason's shaking hand on the flashlight. Finally, Jason croaked out. Mark? Mark stopped. For a long, heavy moment, the silence pressed down. Then Mark turned, slowly, and walked out of the room, his steps eerily even. Jason sat frozen until morning, the flashlight still clutched in his trembling hand. The next day, Jason confronted him. Dude, do you know you talk in your sleep? Jason asked cautiously. Mark looked up from his cereal, his expression unreadable. Oh, he said flatly. I guess I do sometimes. Jason forced a laugh. Yeah, well, last night you were standing in my room. Scared the hell out of me. For the first time, Mark's lips curved into a smile. It didn't reach his eyes. Sorry, I don't remember. Jason wanted to press further, but something in Mark's tone made his stomach twist. It didn't sound like an apology, more like amusement. After that, Jason started locking his bedroom door at night. The next day, Jason confronted him. Dude, do you know you talk in your sleep? Jason asked cautiously. Mark looked up from his cereal, his expression unreadable. Oh, he said flatly. I guess I do sometimes. Jason forced a laugh. Yeah, well, last night you were standing in my room. Scared the hell out of me. For the first time, Mark's lips curved into a smile. It didn't reach his eyes. Sorry, I don't remember. Jason wanted to press further, but something in Mark's tone made his stomach twist. It didn't sound like an apology, more like amusement. After that, Jason started locking his bedroom door at night. The breaking point came 3 weeks later. Jason woke in the middle of the night, the air in his room cold and heavy. His eyes snapped open, and Mark was there again. But this time, he wasn't at the foot of the bed. He was leaning over Jason, face inches from his own. Jason Taylor, he whispered, breath sour and damp against Jason's cheek. Jason Taylor. Jason Taylor. Jason jerked back with a strangled cry, slamming his hand against the lamp. The room flooded with light. Mark didn't flinch. He just stood there, smiling now, his teeth bared, eyes still glassy. Jason scrambled up, voice breaking. Get the hell out of my room. For the first time, Mark's chanting stopped. He tilted his head, studying Jason as though confused. Then, without a word, he turned and walked out, leaving the door wide open behind him. Jason didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day, Jason went digging. He needed answers, anything that would explain what was happening. He found them in Mark's desk drawer. Stacks of notebooks, filled from cover to cover with Jason's name. Written in cramped, obsessive handwriting. Over and over, Jason Taylor. Jason Taylor. Jason Taylor. Some pages had only his first name, written larger and larger until the ink gouged through the paper. Others had full sentences. Jason must stay. Jason must not leave. Jason belongs here. Jason's blood ran cold. That night, Jason didn't lock his door. He didn't stay in bed. He packed his bags in silence, every nerve on edge, ears straining for the sound of footsteps. His heart raced as he crept to the front door, suitcase in hand. But when he reached for the knob, a voice whispered just behind him. "Jason," he spun around. Mark stood in the dark hallway, eyes shining, smile stretched too wide. "You can't leave," he whispered. "Not yet." Jason didn't wait to hear more. He yanked the door open and ran into the night, suitcase dragging behind him, lungs burning. He never went back. But sometimes, in quiet moments, when he's alone in a new apartment, Jason swears he hears it again. A whisper in the dark, calling his name. Story 5, The Eviction. When Maya's roommate, Claire, vanished without warning, the first emotion she felt wasn't fear, it was relief. Claire had always been odd. She rarely spoke, and when she did, her words carried a strange weight, like she was always hiding something. She kept her bedroom door locked at all times, even when she was inside, and Maya often heard faint scratching sounds coming from behind it late at night. At first, Maya thought Claire was just private, maybe eccentric. But soon, the little things piled up. The way Claire sometimes stood in the kitchen staring at Maya without blinking. The way she scribbled furiously in notebooks she never let out of her sight. The way she sometimes muttered names in her sleep. Names Maya didn't recognize. Living with her was exhausting, like sharing an apartment with a shadow. So when Maya came home one evening to find Claire's room completely empty, no furniture, no clothes, not even her toothbrush in the bathroom, she didn't panic. She just exhaled. Finally, she thought, she was free. For the first time in months, the apartment felt normal. Quiet. Maya decided she would clean out whatever Claire had left behind and maybe even sublet the room. The rent was tough on her own, and with Claire gone, there was nothing stopping her. The next morning, she began going through the few boxes Claire had left stacked in the corner of the closet. Most contained junk, old clothes, crumpled receipts, books written in languages Maya didn't understand. But then she found one box that was different. It was heavier. When she pulled it out and opened it, her stomach turned to ice. Inside were rows of small glass jars, neatly arranged like specimens. Each jar contained teeth. Real, human teeth. Some were tiny, like children's baby teeth, while others were larger, molars, incisors, yellowed with age. Maya picked up one jar with trembling hands. The label on it read, 1998, Sarah. Another jar, 2001, Emily. And another, 2006, Jordan. All neatly dated, all with names. Her breath caught in her throat as she reached for the last jar in the row. Unlike the others, it wasn't full. It was completely empty, the label crisp and new. The handwriting was unmistakably Claire's. It read, Maya soon. Maya dropped the jar, glass shattering across the floor. Her chest tightened, her vision blurred. What did this mean? Why her name? And where was Claire now? That night, Maya didn't sleep. She kept every light on in the apartment, jumping at the smallest sound. Hours dragged by until, sometime around 3 a.m., she finally started to doze off on the couch. That's when she heard it, the creak of the front door opening. Her eyes snapped open. She hadn't locked it? She knew she had. Slow, deliberate footsteps echoed in the apartment. One by one. Closer. Closer. Maya bolted upright and grabbed her phone, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. She whispered into the receiver that someone was in her apartment, that her roommate had disappeared, that she had found something horrifying. The operator told her to stay calm, to stay hidden until officers arrived. But the footsteps didn't stop. They were right outside the living room now. Her doorknob rattled. Slowly, it began to turn. Maya screamed, ran into the bathroom, and locked herself inside. She pressed her back against the door, listening as the footsteps lingered outside. A soft voice whispered her name through the wood. Maya. By the time the police arrived, Maya was still locked in the bathroom, clutching one of the toothed jars like a weapon. The officers searched the apartment from top to bottom. No signs of forced entry. No trace of Claire. But one thing was gone, the last jar. The one labeled Maya Soon. Maya moved out the very next day. She never saw Claire again. But sometimes, when she's alone in a new apartment, she swears she hears footsteps outside her bedroom door at night. And once, when she opened her closet, she thought she saw something glinting in the shadows. A small, empty glass jar.